Earth was inconsequential, an insignificant mote of dust in the vast cosmos. At least, that's what the Barzans believed, until humans unveiled their Dyson sphere. The colossal megastructure, a marvel of human engineering and vision, encapsulated a star, harnessing its limitless energy. Its architects, led by the brilliant Dr. Darren Rice, had achieved the impossible, sending shockwaves through the intergalactic community. The Barzans, a dominant civilization that had long dismissed Earth as a backwater planet, suddenly took notice. As news of the groundbreaking achievement spread, alien dignitaries, covert operatives, and opportunistic entrepreneurs converged on Earth. They sought to investigate the game-changing technology, vying for control over its potential applications and implications. Amidst this chaotic influx of extraterrestrial interest, an unexpected invitation arrived for Dr. Rice from Taurus, a high-ranking Barzan diplomat. The Barzan frontier colony, a remote outpost on the fringes of their empire, teetered on the brink of collapse. Extreme resource scarcity and escalating tensions between the settlement's various alien species threatened its very existence. Recognizing the vast energy-generating potential of Rice's Dyson sphere technology, Taurus proposed an unprecedented alliance. In exchange for Rice's expertise in stabilizing the colony's infrastructure, the Barzans would grant humanity access to advanced alien technologies and a seat at the table of galactic politics. Dr. Rice saw an opportunity to further establish Earth's ascendancy and forge critical alliances. He assembled a talented and diverse crew for the perilous mission into uncharted space. Lucas Salas, a seasoned diplomat, Nolan Briggs, a battle-hardened Special Forces operative, and Dr. Caden Thorne, a brilliant xenoanthropologist, joined Rice as they embarked on their journey to the Barzan frontier colony. But upon arrival, they were confronted with a bleak and chaotic landscape. The colony's once impressive infrastructure lay in ruins, with crumbling buildings, failing life support systems, and dwindling supplies. Desperate alien refugees from dozens of species crowded the streets, vying for scarce resources and engaging in violent clashes as social order unraveled. Amidst this pandemonium, Dr. Rice and his team quickly realized the true magnitude of their challenge. Not all alien factions welcomed their presence or were willing to collaborate. Some viewed the sudden arrival of the humans and their revolutionary technology as a direct threat to their own interests and agendas. As tensions mounted and hidden machinations unfolded, Rice and his crew found themselves navigating a treacherous web of intrigue, espionage, and shifting alliances while racing against time to keep their groundbreaking technology from falling into the wrong hands. The fate of not only the Barzan frontier colony, but potentially the future of human-alien relations hung in the balance. As the human delegation set to work in the decaying central plaza of the Barzan frontier colony, they quickly encountered resistance from the colony's wary inhabitants. Dr. Rice and his team hastily assembled a rudimentary laboratory amidst the rubble, their advanced equipment a stark contrast to the crumbling structures surrounding them. Suspicious eyes from dozens of alien species tracked their every move as they began to demonstrate the incredible potential of their Dyson sphere technology. Suddenly, a barrage of energy blasts tore through the plaza, sending chunks of debris flying. Zorgian mercenaries, their armor glinting under the harsh sun, charged towards the human encampment with weapons drawn. At their head strode Krath, a hulking figure with cold, calculating eyes. The warlord barked orders to his troops, directing them to secure the Dyson sphere plans at any cost. Nolan Briggs reacted instantly, his battle-honed reflexes kicking into gear. He rallied the human security forces, deploying them in a defensive perimeter around the lab. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as the two sides exchanged fire, the acrid scent of ozone mingling with the dust kicked up by the firefight. Briggs fought his way through the chaos, his movements fluid and precise, dispatching Zorgian attackers with ruthless efficiency. Amidst the confusion, Briggs spotted a female Lyraxian, her iridescent scales shimmering with fear, being dragged away by a group of Zorgians. With a burst of speed, he closed the distance, engaging the mercenaries in a flurry of close-quarters combat. The Lyraxian, Zara, scrambled to safety as Briggs neutralized her captors with a series of devastating blows. As the last of the Zorgians fell, an eerie silence descended upon the plaza. The colonists emerged from their shelters, their expressions a mix of awe and apprehension as they beheld the aftermath of the battle. Briggs helped Zara to her feet, her eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," she breathed, her voice trembling slightly. "I am in your debt." Zara quickly proved her worth, sharing her intimate knowledge of the colony's inner workings with the human team. She guided them through the labyrinthine network of power conduits and life support systems, pointing out key vulnerabilities and potential allies among the alien factions. Lucas Salas seized upon this newfound information, arranging a clandestine meeting with Thoran, the leader of the influential Kell Merchant Guild. In a dimly lit chamber, the two negotiated cautiously, each seeking to gauge the other's intentions. Thoran's eyes gleamed with avarice as Salas described the marvels of human technology, yet he remained guarded, his true motives inscrutable. As Salas navigated the delicate dance of diplomacy, Dr. Thorne ventured deep into the colony's seedy underbelly, his curiosity drawing him towards the secrets lurking in the shadows. In a dingy tavern, he encountered Lyra, a Vaxian with a network of informants that rivaled any spy agency. Thorne bartered medical supplies for her knowledge, learning of the purest's sinister plot to purge the colony of outside influence. Just as the human team began to make progress, a new crisis erupted. Traxian refugees, their faces gaunt with desperation, flooded into the human encampment, begging for sanctuary. Dr. Rice found himself torn between his desire to help and the fear of compromising Earth's security. As he grappled with the weight of this decision, alarms blared throughout the colony. A devastating computer virus had breached the life support systems, threatening to plunge the entire settlement into lethal chaos. With time running out and the fate of the colony hanging in the balance, Dr. Rice and his team raced to find a solution. They worked tirelessly to construct a scaled-down Dyson sphere, hoping to provide the colony with a sustainable energy source and prove the value of human ingenuity. Yet even as they labored, the shadows of conspiracy grew longer, hinting at a deeper, more malevolent force at work beneath the surface of the colony's struggles. A force that threatened to unravel not only the Barzan frontier colony, but the very future of humanity's place among the stars. The alarms blaring throughout the colony took on a more ominous tone as Dr. Rice and his team delved deeper into the nature of the computer virus ravaging the life support systems. Zara's fingers flew across the holographic display, her iridescent scales reflecting the rapidly changing data streams. "This isn't just a simple virus," she said, her voice tight with tension. "It's adapting, evolving. I've never seen anything like it." Dr. Rice leaned in, his brow furrowed. "Can you trace its origin?" Zara's eyes widened as she made the connection. "The Cortarians. This bears all the hallmarks of their advanced AI systems. But that's impossible. They've been extinct for centuries." As they grappled with this revelation, Lucas Salas entered the makeshift command center, his usually impeccable appearance marred by fatigue and stress. "The situation outside is deteriorating rapidly. We need to act fast." Dr. Thorne burst in, his eyes wild with excitement and fear. "You're not going to believe what I've discovered." He quickly relayed his encounter with Zolan and the warnings about the Barzan purists' true intentions. The air grew heavy with the weight of their dilemma. Dr. Rice ran a hand through his hair, the responsibility of their choices pressing down on him. "If we share our technology, we risk it being weaponized. If we don't, millions will die." Before they could debate further, the colony shook violently. Through the viewports, they watched in horror as a massive Cortarian warship materialized from hyperspace, its sleek obsidian hull dripping with weaponry. A holographic transmission flickered to life, revealing the face of Kalen, the Cortarian warlord. His voice, a discordant blend of mechanical and organic, filled the room. "Humans of Earth, your Dyson sphere technology has not gone unnoticed. Surrender it now or face annihilation." Nolan Briggs, who had been quietly assessing their defenses, stepped forward. "We need to buy time. I can coordinate a defense with what we have, but it won't hold for long." As Briggs sprinted off to rally their meager forces, Dr. Rice turned to his team. "We need a solution, and we need it now. Zara, focus on containing that virus. Lucas, keep the colony from tearing itself apart. Caden, see if you can learn anything more from Zolan about Cortarian weaknesses. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity. Outside, the first salvos of the battle lit up the colony's shields, casting eerie shadows across the faces of the desperate inhabitants. Dr. Rice stared at the schematics of their Dyson sphere prototype, his mind racing. There had to be a way to use their technology to save the colony without it falling into the wrong hands. As another blast rocked the station, he realized that the fate of not just the Barzan frontier colony, but potentially the entire galaxy, rested on the decisions they would make in the coming hours. The command center shook violently as another volley from the Cortarian warship slammed into the colony's weakening shields. Dr. Rice steadied himself against a console, his mind racing through potential solutions. "Our weapons are barely scratching their hull," Nolan Briggs's voice crackled over the comms, punctuated by the sound of return fire. "We need a new strategy, and fast." Rice's eyes darted between the schematics of their prototype Dyson sphere and the tactical display showing the Cortarian ship's position. A spark of inspiration hit him. "Zara, can we repurpose the energy collectors to focus the star's output into a single beam?" he asked, already manipulating the holographic interface. The Lyraxian's fingers flew across her own console. "Theoretically, yes, but the power surge could overload our systems." "It's a risk we'll have to take," Rice said grimly. "Start the recalibration. I'll adjust the targeting parameters." As they worked feverishly, the colony's defenses continued to crumble under the relentless Cortarian assault. Briggs coordinated a series of evasive maneuvers, buying them precious seconds. "Energy collectors aligned," Zara announced, her scales shimmering with tension. "Ready on your mark." Rice took a deep breath. "Fire!" A blinding beam of concentrated stellar energy lanced out from the colony, striking the Cortarian warship. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash, the enemy vessel's shields flickered and died. "Direct hit!" Briggs shouted. "Their primary systems are offline." The massive warship listed in space, trailing debris as it retreated into hyperspace. A ragged cheer went up from the defenders, but Rice knew their troubles were a long way to go. In the aftermath of the battle, Dr. Thorne approached with a Cortarian survivor in tow. "This is Zolan," he introduced. "He has crucial information about ancient megastructure technologies." Zolan, his cybernetic implants pulsing with residual energy, spoke in a synthesized voice. "There is a Cortarian data core hidden within this colony. It contains schematics for technologies beyond your comprehension." "How do we access it?" Rice asked, his scientific curiosity piqued. "Only Kalen possesses the genetic key," Zolan replied, "and he has fled to the fringe territories." Before they could process this revelation, alarms blared throughout the colony. Lucas Salas burst into the command center, his face ashen. "The Barzan purists have launched a coup. They've taken control of the main hub and are demanding we surrender the Dyson sphere technology." Rice's blood ran cold as he realized the implications. "If they get their hands on that tech..." His words were cut short as the doors to the command center exploded inward. Barzan purist soldiers poured through the opening, their weapons trained on the human crew. A towering figure strode in behind them, his eyes gleaming with fanatical zeal. "I am Grand Purifier Vorlok," he announced. "You will give us the Dyson sphere data, or you will die." Rice's mind raced, weighing their options. With a subtle nod to Briggs, he stepped forward. "Very well. I'll transfer the data." As he approached a console, Rice's fingers flew across the interface, initiating a complete wipe of the Dyson sphere schematics. He hit the final command just as Vorlok realized what was happening. "Seize them!" the Purifier roared. Briggs sprang into action, hurling a stun grenade into the midst of the Purist soldiers. In the ensuing chaos, he led the team through a maintenance hatch and into the colony's winding service corridors. "This way," Lyra's voice called out from ahead. The Vaxian informant guided them to a hidden hangar bay where a battered smuggler ship awaited. As they piled into the vessel, laser fire peppered the hull. Briggs took the controls, his hands dancing across the unfamiliar alien interface. With a roar of engines, they blasted out of the hangar and into open space. "Where to?" Briggs asked as he evaded pursuit craft. Rice looked at his beleaguered team, then out at the stars beyond. "We find Kalen," he said firmly, "before the purists recover and come after us." The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the chaos of the Barzan frontier colony. As the adrenaline of their escape faded, Rice knew that their true challenge was only beginning. Somewhere out in the lawless fringes of space, a Cortarian warlord held the key to technologies that could reshape the galaxy, and they had to find him first. The smuggler ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, its hull scarred from the hasty escape. Dr. Rice peered through the viewport at the vast expanse of uncharted space before them. "Any sign of pursuit?" he asked, his voice taut with tension. Briggs shook his head, eyes fixed on the scanner. "Nothing yet, but it's only a matter of time before the purists pick up our trail." Rice nodded grimly. "Then we need to move fast. Lyra, can you pull up the star charts for this sector?" The Vaxian's fingers danced across the holographic interface, projecting a three-dimensional map of the surrounding systems. "We're on the edge of the Krell Nebula," she said. "Perfect place to hide if you don't want to be found." "Or to find someone who doesn't want to be found," Salas added, his gaze locked on the swirling clouds of cosmic dust. Rice activated the tracking algorithm he had devised, feeding Kalen's ion signature into the ship's sensors. For several tense moments, the crew waited in silence as the system processed the data. A single red dot blinked to life on the star chart. "There," Rice pointed. "That's our best lead on Kalen's location." Briggs leaned in, studying the coordinates. "Looks like a small outpost on the fringes of the nebula, probably crawling with all sorts of unsavory characters." "Then we'll fit right in," Thorne quipped, though his attempt at humor did little to lighten the mood. As they approached the outpost, its true nature became apparent. A hodgepodge of interconnected structures clung to the surface of a barren asteroid, surrounded by a swarm of derelict ships and space debris. "Welcome to Krax's den," Lyra announced, her tone dripping with disdain. "If you want to disappear, this is the place to do it." The crew disembarked, weapons concealed but at the ready. The outpost corridors buzzed with a cacophony of alien languages and the acrid smell of illicit substances. Beings from a dozen different species eyed them suspiciously as they made their way to the central hub. There they found Krax, a hulking, multi-limbed creature with cybernetic implants protruding from its gelatinous hide. The crime lord's compound eyes swiveled to assess the newcomers. "What brings you to my humble establishment?" Krax's voice was a guttural rumble. Salas stepped forward, his diplomat's training kicking in. "We're looking for someone, a Cortarian named Kalen." Krax's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Information has a price, human. What do you offer in exchange?" As Salas attempted to negotiate, Rice noticed Briggs subtly scanning the room, likely formulating a plan should diplomacy fail. Zara and Thorne kept watch on the various exits, aware of the growing tension. Krax's demands proved exorbitant, and Salas's patience wore thin. With a subtle nod to Briggs, Rice gave the signal to initiate their backup plan. In a fluid motion, Briggs hurled a series of smoke grenades into the crowded hub. Chaos erupted as patrons scrambled for cover, and Krax's security forces opened fire. "Move!" Briggs shouted, leading the charge towards Krax's private chambers. The team fought their way through the compound, Zara's knowledge of alien tech proving invaluable as she hacked security systems on the fly. Thorne provided covering fire, his aim precise despite the mayhem. They found Kalen in a heavily fortified cell, the Cortarian warlord's eyes blazing with defiance. As Briggs worked to disable the locking mechanism, a familiar voice cut through the din of battle. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." They turned to see Zalan, the Cortarian survivor they had rescued, training a weapon on them. His cybernetic implants pulsed with an ominous light. "Zolan, what are you doing?" Rice demanded, his mind racing to understand this betrayal. "Ensuring the purity of our legacy," Zolan replied, his synthesized voice cold and emotionless. "The Cortarian data core must be destroyed, not claimed by lesser races." Before anyone could react, Zolan fired. Thorne cried out in pain as the energy blast caught him in the chest, sending him crumpling to the floor. In the ensuing confusion, Zolan fled, clutching a device he had torn from the cell's control panel. "Vital components," Kalen spat, emerging from his prison. "Your traitorous friend just made accessing the data core much more difficult." As Zara tended to Thorne's wounds, Rice faced the captured warlord. "You're going to help us, Kalen, whether you like it or not." Kalen's lips curled into a sneer. "And why would I do that?" "Because," Rice said, his voice steady, "the fate of the stars hangs in the balance, and like it or not, you're now part of this." As alarms blared throughout the outpost and the sounds of approaching security forces grew louder, the team prepared for their next move. They had Kalen, but the true challenge, accessing the Cortarian data core and deciding how to use its power, still lay ahead. The smuggler ship shuddered as it accelerated away from Krax's den, the crew still reeling from their narrow escape. Dr. Rice studied Kalen's stoic face, searching for any hint of the warlord's true intentions. "We need to stabilize the colony," Rice declared, breaking the tense silence. "The Dyson sphere technology could be the key." Nolan Briggs' eyes flashed with anger. "And hand over that kind of power? We should keep it to ourselves, use it as leverage." "Leverage?" Rice scoffed. "People are dying, Nolan. We can't play political games." The argument escalated, voices rising until Briggs shoved Rice against the bulkhead. Lyra intervened, her lithe form surprisingly strong as she separated the two men. "Enough," she hissed. "Your squabbling helps no one." As the humans glared at each other, the ship's sensors blared a warning. Lyra's fingers danced across the controls, her expression grim. "Barzan warships," she announced. "They've found us." On the lead vessel's bridge, a figure in sleek combat armor stood unnaturally still. Zyrax, the purest assassin, watched the smuggler ship's evasive maneuvers with cold calculation. "Disable their engines," she ordered. "I want them alive." Laser fire lanced across space, grazing the smuggler ship's hull. Lyra cursed in her native tongue, pushing the engines to their limits. "We can't outrun them," she growled. "Any bright ideas?" Kalen's eyes gleamed with opportunity. "There's a Cortarian facility nearby. It houses a gateway network, linking key sites across the galaxy." Rice's scientific curiosity warred with his distrust of the warlord. "And you can access it?" "For a price," Kalen smirked. "My freedom." Another blast rocked the ship. Rice nodded reluctantly. "Fine, get us there." Lyra guided the battered vessel towards a seemingly empty patch of space. At Kalen's instruction, she transmitted a complex signal. A massive structure shimmered into view, its architecture an impossible blend of technology and organic forms. They docked moments before the Barzan ships arrived. The crew sprinted through twisting corridors, Kalen effortlessly bypassing security measures. "The gateway chamber is just ahead," he called out. They burst into a cavernous room dominated by a swirling vortex of energy. Kalen's fingers flew across an ancient control panel, the gateway pulsing to life. Laser fire erupted behind them as purist soldiers poured into the chamber. Briggs and Thorne returned fire, covering their retreat. "Go!" Briggs shouted. "We'll hold them off!" Rice hesitated, but Lyra shoved him towards the gateway. "No time for heroics," she snapped. The vortex engulfed them, just as Kalen activated a security lockdown. Rice's last glimpse was of Briggs, Thorne, and Lyra cut off from escape. Reality twisted, reformed. Rice stumbled onto a gleaming metal floor, surrounded by technology beyond his comprehension. Through a massive viewport, he saw a barren world, its surface scarred by impact craters. Kalen's eyes glittered with triumph. "Welcome," he said, "to the heart of Cortarian power." As Rice absorbed the implications of their surroundings, alarms blared throughout the structure. Zyrax had found a way to follow them through the gateway network. The race for the destiny of the universe had only just begun. Rice spun around to see Zyrax materialize through the gateway, her combat armor gleaming in the harsh light of the Cortarian facility. Behind her, purist soldiers poured into the chamber. "Surrender the data core," Zyrax demanded, her voice distorted by her helmet speaker. Before Rice could respond, a familiar figure stepped through the portal. Zolan, his cybernetic implants pulsing with an eerie light, strode past the purest forces. "No one will have the data core," he declared, his synthesized voice echoing through the chamber. "Its power is too great for any race to wield." Zolan's fingers danced across a nearby control panel. Alarms blared throughout the facility as hidden compartments opened, releasing swarms of metallic spheres that coalesced into intricate, aggressive forms. "Cortarian weapons?" Kalen hissed, his eyes wide with recognition. "Self-replicating, they'll consume everything in their path." The swarms descended upon purists and humans alike. Rice ducked behind a console as energy beams lanced overhead. Through the chaos, he spotted Lucas Salas inching towards Vorlock, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We have a common enemy," Salas shouted over the din of battle. "Let us work together, or we all perish." Vorlock hesitated, then nodded grimly. "A temporary alliance," he growled, "until this madness is contained." As Salas brokered the fragile truce, Rice noticed Briggs and his team slip away, likely to infiltrate the Purist command ship. He turned his attention to the facility's systems, searching for a way to neutralize the growing threat. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing a massive terraforming array. Rice's mind raced with possibilities. "Zara," he called out to the Lyraxian engineer, "can we repurpose this to affect the entire system?" Zara's eyes widened as she grasped his plan. "It's possible, but highly unstable. The energy requirements alone could tear this facility apart." "Do it," Rice commanded. "It's our only chance." As Zara worked feverishly to realign the terraforming beam, the battle raged around them. Kalen led a group of his loyalists against the Purists, while Zolan's weapons continued their relentless advance. The facility shuddered as Zara activated the array. Brilliant energy lanced out into space, enveloping the system's barren worlds. Rice watched in awe as atmospheres coalesced and oceans formed in a matter of minutes. A scream of pain cut through his wonder. Zara lay crumpled beside the controls, her body smoking from an energy discharge. Rice rushed to her side, cradling her head as her eyes fluttered open. "Did it work?" she whispered. Before Rice could answer, the chamber fell silent. The weapon swarms hung motionless in the air, their programming conflicted by the sudden appearance of habitable worlds. On the screens, lush forests and verdant plains spread across once desolate planets. Vorlock stepped forward, his zealotry tempered by shock. "What have you done?" "Created a future," Rice replied, rising to face the purifier. "One where we all have a place." The air crackled with tension as human, purist, and Cortarian forces regarded each other warily. Rice knew the hardest part was yet to come, forging a lasting peace from this fragile ceasefire. Briggs returned, his expression grim. "We've secured the Purist ships, but this changes everything. We can't let them have free reign over these new worlds." "And who made humanity the arbiters of galactic destiny?" Salas countered, his diplomat's training evident in his measured tone. Rice felt the weight of the moment pressing down upon him. The data core's secrets could reshape civilization itself, but wielding such power responsibly would be a constant challenge. "We share what we must," Rice declared, silencing the arguments around him. "Basic terraforming data, colony technologies. But the core remains with us, as insurance and as proof that humanity has earned its place among the stars." He met the gaze of each faction's leader in turn. "This system will be open to all, governed by a new Burzan alliance. But make no mistake, the weapons that brought us to this point remain. Let them serve as a reminder of the cost of conflict." As uneasy murmurs of assent filled the chamber, Rice turned back to the viewport. The newly formed worlds beckoned, ripe with possibility and fraught with danger. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since this ordeal began, he allowed himself to hope. Rice allowed himself to hope as he gazed at the newly terraformed worlds. The fragile peace held for now. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, but cooperation had won out over conflict, for the moment. Weeks passed. The human crew found themselves in an uneasy alliance with the Barzan purists and other factions. Rice oversaw the sharing of basic terraforming data, carefully guarding the full secrets of the Cortarian megastructure. On a crisp morning, Rice led a small team to conduct maintenance on one of the fledgling colony worlds. Briggs insisted on accompanying them, ever vigilant. "I don't like this, Doc," Briggs muttered, scanning the horizon. "Too exposed." Rice opened his mouth to reply when the air erupted with plasma fire. Purist dropships screamed overhead, disgorging heavily armed troops. "Ambush!" Briggs roared, shoving Rice behind cover. The security chief returned fire, his aim precise despite the chaos. Zyra's voice boomed from a hovering command platform. "Surrender the doctor, and the rest may live." Briggs cursed, his face a mask of persistence. "Like hell," he growled, laying down suppressing fire. The humans fought valiantly, but they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Rice watched in horror as a plasma bolt caught Briggs square in the chest. The security chief crumpled, his eyes unfocused. "Nolan!" Rice cried, scrambling towards his fallen comrade. Strong hands seized him, dragging him away. The last thing he saw before a stun baton connected with his temple was Zara's anguished face as she fled with Thorn and Salus. Rice awoke in a sterile cell, his head throbbing. A familiar figure stood before him, cybernetic implants pulsing with malevolent light. "Hello, Doctor," Zolan said, his synthesized voice devoid of emotion. "I believe it's time we had a talk about those Cortarian secrets you've been keeping." Outside the cell, Zyra paced impatiently. Her eyes gleamed with fanatical zeal. "The megastructure will be ours," she hissed, "and with it, the purity of our vision." At the former Cortarian facility, Zara worked feverishly at a console. Her fingers flew across alien controls as Thorn and Salus looked on. "We have to get him back," Zara said, her voice tight with worry. "If they force Rice to reveal everything—" Salus nodded grimly. "I have contacts, mercenaries who owe me favors. It's not much, but—" The chamber's doors hissed open. Kalen strode in, flanked by his loyalist. The Cortarian warlord's eyes glittered with cold calculation. "Perhaps," Kalen said, his voice smooth as silk, "we can help each other." Thorn's hand inched towards his weapon. "Why should we trust you?" Kalen's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Because, my dear doctor, I have something you need, and you have something I want." As the unlikely allies hatched their desperate plan, Rice endured Zyra's interrogation. Each question brought him closer to an impossible choice. Reveal humanity's newfound power and save billions, or protect that knowledge at a terrible cost. The colony's fate hung in the balance, a fragile thing poised on the edge of catastrophe. Rice's eyes snapped open as cold water splashed across his face. Zyra loomed over him, her cybernetic enhancements glowing with an eerie intensity. "Your resistance is admirable, Doctor," she hissed, "but ultimately futile. The secrets of the Cortarian megastructures will be ours, one way or another." Rice struggled against his restraints, his mind racing. He knew the devastating potential of the technology Zyra sought. Billions of lives hung in the balance. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Rice said, his voice hoarse. "This power could destroy everything we've built." Zyra's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Then perhaps a demonstration is in order." She strode to a nearby console, her fingers dancing across the alien controls. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the newly terraformed worlds. "For each hour you withhold information," Zyra said, "I will systematically destabilize one of these colonies. How many will you sacrifice for your principles, Doctor?" Rice's heart sank as he watched atmospheric disturbances erupt across one of the planets. He had to buy time, but at what cost? Meanwhile, Zara and Thorn crouched behind a ridge overlooking Zyra's fortified compound. Thorn studied a holographic schematic projected from a data chip. "These plans from the data core are our best shot," Thorn whispered. "If we can reach the central control chamber, we might have a chance to—" A familiar voice cut through the night. "To what? Get yourselves killed?" Zara whirled, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. Nolan Briggs emerged from the shadows, his chest still bearing the scars of his near-fatal injury. "Briggs," Zara exclaimed, "how did you—" "No time," Briggs interrupted, his eyes hard. We've got a doctor to save and a megalomaniac to stop. The trio moved swiftly through the compound's defenses, Briggs's tactical expertise complementing Zara and Thorne's technical knowledge. They fought their way through waves of purist soldiers, the sound of plasma fire echoing through steel corridors. As they neared the central chamber, an explosion rocked the facility. Through the smoke and debris, Kalen's mercenary forces poured in, their weapons trained on both purists and humans alike. "Looks like this party just got a lot more interesting," Briggs growled, taking cover behind a fallen support beam. Inside the control room, Rice watched in horror as Zira's finger hovered over the activation switch for the proto-Dyson sphere's resonance catalyzers. "Last chance, Doctor," she snarled. "The secrets, or I unleash a power beyond your imagining." Before Rice could respond, the chamber doors exploded inward. Zara, Thorne, and Briggs burst through, weapons blazing. In the chaos, Zira slammed her hand down on the console. The facility shuddered as vast energies surged through ancient conduits. On the holographic display, the proto-Dyson sphere began to pulse with terrifying intensity. "What have you done?" Rice shouted over the rising whine of overloading systems. Zira's eyes widened in genuine fear. "It wasn't supposed to. The expansion rate is exponential." As alarms blared and Kalen's forces poured into the chamber, a familiar voice cut through the pandemonium. Lucas Salas strode forward, his diplomatic training evident even in this crisis. "We don't have time for this," Salas declared. "If we don't act now, there won't be a system left to fight over." In a matter of moments, an uneasy ceasefire fell over the room. Rice scrambled to the main control panel, his mind racing through the implications of the data streaming across the screens. "The only way to stop this is a focused harmonic resonance pulse," Rice explained, his fingers flying across the alien interface. "But the power requirements, it could destabilize the entire megastructure." Kalen stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with the hunger for power, barely concealed beneath a veneer of cooperation. "My forces can hold off any purist counterattack. Do what must be done, Doctor." As Briggs and Kalen's troops engaged Zira's remaining loyalists, Rice, Zara, and Thorne worked feverishly to calibrate the harmonics. The air crackled with ozone as energy levels spiked to unprecedented levels. "Now or never," Rice muttered, his hand hovering over the activation switch. He locked eyes with Zara, saw the fear and grit mirrored in her gaze. With a silent prayer to whatever forces might be listening, Rice triggered the pulse. The universe seemed to hold its breath for a heartbeat. Then a blinding flash erupted from the heart of the proto-Dyson sphere. The shockwave rippled outward, shattering the structure's outer layers while leaving the core worlds intact. As the light faded and the alarms fell silent, Rice slumped against the console. The immediate threat had passed, but at a terrible cost. The holographic display showed widespread devastation across the system. "My God," Thorne whispered, "the atmospheric stability of the colonies." Rice's heart sank as he analyzed the data. The megastructure's near collapse had triggered a chain reaction. Their miracle worlds were dying, their atmospheres bleeding away into the void of space. "How long?" Briggs asked, his voice grim. "Weeks," Rice replied. "Maybe less." The weight of billions of lives pressed down upon him. Rice knew there was only one choice left, one final gamble that could save or doom them all. With trembling hands, he reached for the data core, prepared to unleash its full power in a desperate bid for survival. Rice's fingers trembled as he initiated the final sequence. The data core's secrets unfurled before him, a torrent of alien knowledge flooding the facility's systems. Holographic displays erupted to life, filling the chamber with a ghostly blue glow. "It's done," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've shared everything." Zara's eyes widened as she scanned the incoming data. The atmospheric degradation. "It's accelerating. We have less time than we thought." Alarms blared throughout the complex. Outside, the sky had taken on a sickly orange hue. Rice watched in horror as the first wisps of toxic gas began to seep through the environmental seals. "We need to move," Briggs growled, hefting his weapon. "The rioting spread to the outer districts. It's not safe here anymore." They rushed through corridors choked with panicked civilians. Rice felt a pang of guilt as he saw the fear etched on their faces. He had brought them hope, only to have it slip away. In the central plaza, chaos reigned. Briggs barked orders to his security team, establishing a perimeter around the science complex. The crack of stun batons punctuated the air as they pushed back the surging crowd. "This is your final warning." Briggs's amplified voice boomed across the square. "Return to your designated safe zones or face immediate detention." Rice turned away, unable to watch. He focused instead on the makeshift lab where Zara hunched over a glowing console. "How's the regeneration matrix coming?" he asked, peering at the incomprehensible strings of alien code. Zara's fingers flew across the interface. "I think I've isolated the key protein sequences. If we can synthesize enough of the base compounds, we might be able to jumpstart the atmospheric recyclers." A deafening explosion rocked the building. Rice stumbled, catching himself on a nearby workstation. Through the window, he saw plumes of acrid smoke rising from the biosphere restoration module. "No!" Zara cried, her face ashen. "All our work—" A wounded technician staggered into the room, clutching a bleeding arm. "Cortarian extremists," he gasped. "They destroyed the module, said they'd rather die than see lesser races control their technology." Rice's heart sank. Months of progress, obliterated in an instant. He looked at the rapidly deteriorating atmospheric readings and made a grim calculation. "We're out of options," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "Get Salas. It's time we talk to Zolan." Hours later, Rice stood before the stasis pod containing the renegade Cortarian. Zolan's cybernetic implants pulsed with an eerie rhythm, perfectly synced to the hum of the life support systems. Salas approached, his usual diplomatic composure cracked by exhaustion and worry. "Are you sure about this, Doctor? The damage to his mind—" Rice nodded grimly. "We have no choice. If there's even a chance he knows how to save us, we have to take it." The revival process was agonizing to watch. Zolan's body convulsed as his consciousness was pulled back from the brink. When his eyes finally opened, they were filled with a mixture of pain and madness. "The bridge," Zolan rasped, his synthesized voice distorted by damaged implants. "The only way— escape." Salas leaned in, his tone urgent but gentle. "What bridge, Zolan? Where can we go?" The Cortarian's cybernetic eyes flickered rapidly, holographic symbols dancing across their surface. "Coordinates. In my mind. Transgalactic sanctuary. Last hope." What followed was a harrowing ordeal as Salas carefully extracted the information from Zolan's fractured psyche. By the end, the Cortarian lay still, his mind irreparably shattered by the invasive procedure. Rice wasted no time. With trembling hands, he input the coordinates into the prototype gateway. The ancient Cortarian technology hummed to life, tearing a hole in the fabric of space-time. "It's working!" Zara exclaimed, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. But as the gateway stabilized, the situation spiraled out of control. Word of the evacuation spread like wildfire through the dying colonies. Millions of desperate beings converged on the complex, overwhelming Briggs security forces. Rice watched in horror as the orderly evacuation devolved into chaos. Dr. Thorne disappeared into the surging crowd, swept away by the tide of panicked refugees. Rice called out, but his voice was lost in the cacophony of terror and desperation. As he was pushed through the gateway, Rice caught one last glimpse of the world they were leaving behind. The sky burned, toxic storm clouds roiling overhead. Then, in a flash of blinding light, it was gone. They emerged onto a barren, windswept plain, a rogue planet adrift in the cosmic void. Rice stumbled, disoriented by the abrupt transition. Around him, countless aliens materialized, their cries of confusion echoing across the desolate landscape. "Where are we?" Zara asked, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Rice gazed at the unfamiliar stars overhead, a leaden weight settling in his chest. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I fear we've only traded one crisis for another." As more refugees poured through the gateway, Rice saw the first signs of conflict erupting among the disparate species. The fragile alliance that had held them together was already beginning to fray. He clutched the data core to his chest, its secrets both a blessing and a curse. As the sound of angry voices rose around him, Rice realized that their fight for survival was nowhere near the end. It had only just begun.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.